So, like my mom, she would always spend more time with her boyfriend than she would with us. You know what I mean? And so that was the issue that I had within myself for a long time.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back to another episode of Flip That Switch. I'm your boy B to the Sis Naive, and we're back with another episode. If you didn't get a chance to go watch the previous episode, please go back and watch it. Make sure you go back and watch that one before you watch this one. But today, we're going to be diving into another topic that I want to discuss, and I want to talk about childhood trauma. A lot of people suffer from that, and a lot of people really haven't healed from that. There's a lot of people who have childhood trauma that they've experienced from back in the gap, and they just don't know how to heal from it, or it still carries with them to this day. They still think about it to this day. They still talk about it with others to this day, and they kind of haven't fully healed from it, or just don't have an outlet to really talk about it. So I want to really just dive into that episode. But before I do that, I'm going to introduce my boy Anthony. You guys have seen him from a previous episode where we talked about tragedy. Again, Anthony's someone that's been my boy for 25 plus years. And we did do an episode on tragedy, but, you know, we started recently talking, and I remember we were having a conversation about like what he went through as a child, and I had it on my heart to do an episode on childhood trauma. So he was like, man, it'd be great if I could do that episode because just to get my story out. And I was like, oh yeah, for sure. So without further ado, let me introduce y'all to my boy Anthony. And what's up, yo?
What's up, man?
What's good, bro?
Hey, just taking it one day at a time.
Right on, right on. Appreciate you coming on again, man. I know you're a pretty busy guy, and thank you again for just doing another episode with me on this podcast and just really allowing my platform to be an outlet for you to get your story out. So truly, truly appreciate that.
Absolutely.
All right. So let's dive right in, bro. So Anthony, would you say you suffer from childhood trauma?
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay. Kind of talk to me a little bit about your childhood that kind of led you to where you are today with having that childhood trauma, some of the things you experienced as a kid, and, you know, why those left a lasting memory on you from a trauma standpoint. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, childhood trauma led me to learn a lot of hard lessons. That's first and foremost, you know what I mean? Because that's what really makes up who you are, as a person. And so, once you get wise enough to really start questioning yourself, why you are the way you are, most of the time it stems from situations, you know what I mean, that still stems from childhood. Your
Yeah.
upbringing, you know what I mean? Things that really, molded you into who you are, you having some of the characteristics you may have, flaws or not, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
So
Yeah, understandable. Did you grow up with both parents in the household?
yes.
Okay. So mother and father were there. And how long before they separated?
So my dad and my real mom separated when I was about 8 or 9.
Okay. Okay.
But so like I always grew up with a stepdad and a stepmom,
Okay.
and so I always had,
So basically, you had two sets of parents. You had your dad and stepmom, and then you had your mom and stepdad.
yeah,
Got it.
it's
Got
always
it.
been that
Okay.
type of thing. And so,
Okay.
and so, with me always having, two sets of parents, you know what I mean? I thought, I was an angel. You know what I'm saying? I thought like I ain't have no flaws. You know what I mean? Because I got two sets of parents, and I'm straight. You know what I mean? But that definitely wasn't the case. I learned that later on in life.
Yeah. Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about some of the things that you experienced kind of that kind of really shaped you, or I mean, like, or if they didn't shape you, it bothered you. Some of the things that you went through that really just truly bothered you, that you look back on now and be like, you know what, this is why I am the way I am.
Right. So okay, I had parents, right? You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And my parents has always been there for me. but I always looked at it from one perspective, and that was a parent being a parent. But it's different categories that goes along with it as far as the emotional, the mental, the physical, the spiritual things of
Mhm.
that nature. So even though my parents were present, you know what I mean. What I learned later on in life is that they weren't emotionally available. So I was raised in a household where I wasn't really allowed to express myself as a kid or have a voice as far as, having my own opinion and having my own thoughts.
Wow. So when you would try to express your opinion or have your own thoughts, what was that met with? What how did they respond to that?
Uh, well, it depends on which parent you was dealing with. You know what I mean? If it was
Yeah.
pops, you was dealing with you was gonna get a slapped or punched. You know what I'm saying? With the OG, you just go get stopped real quick, cutting your tracks. You know what I mean? Either way, you was being cut short of having an opinion or expressing yourself. You know what I mean?
Wow.
So it was no. So if you felt a certain way, it was no. They was invalidating the way you feel off tops, and it was the way they felt about it was the only right way. Well, it seemed like it was the only right way. So how that affected me is that I grew up going through life always needing other people's validation.
Mm,
You know what I mean? And
mm,
so validation as far as how they felt about what I did or what they thought about what I did. Always, you know what I'm saying, cared about what people thought about me. So yeah,
wow. Wow. So because you couldn't seek them, you sought after other people to for your validity.
absolutely.
Wow. And okay, so when you would try to bring them your opinions or thoughts and they weren't really trying to hear it, how did that initially make you feel? Like, were you sad about it? Were you mad about it? Were you like, okay, you know what, fine, I'm just going to not even bring stuff to them because it's no point? Like, did you kind of numb yourself to it, or how did you feel about that initially?
So so what happens is, when you're raised like that, it blinds you. So you don't really see it as a problem or an issue.
Mm,
You know what I mean? It's you do what your parents do, and that's it. You know what I mean? You do what your parents say do, or you do what your parents want you to do, and that's it. You know what I mean? Either they way or no way. That type of deal.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
the only time I did my way is when I was outside of the crib. You know what I mean? So that's why I was always so rebellious and always the wrong way. If that makes sense. I just did my own thing.
yeah, yeah. Wow. So to this day, are you still like that?
No, no, no.
How long? Okay, so how long before you kind of turned over a new leaf to say that, okay, you know what? I really got to check myself because even though this is how I was raised, this is not how I actually want to be in life. So that's the first part of the question. The second part of the question is, once you figure that out, who was it that helped shape you to do a 180 to realize, okay, this is the way that I really truly want to go. So talk to me a little bit about how long did it take, and then also who helped shape you into getting to that place that you are today.
It took me my whole life, B. You know what I mean? I'm gonna have to say recently. I'm gonna have to say within the last year and a half, 2 years. You know what I mean? I've been able to reflect on a lot. You know what I mean? And you know what I mean? And so, like, just dealing with people, I have boundaries now. It's a certain type of way that I, supposed to be treated. And I don't allow anybody to treat me any lesser than what I'm worth.
Wow. And who kind of helped you in that regard? Was it somebody that you reached out to kind of help you be like, I don't see you being that type of individual that how you were raised. So let me help you kind of do a 180. Was there somebody that helped you in that, or is it kind of you just prayed about it and you kind of just talked to God and God was the one that you know, helped you change?
My last relationship, you know what I mean? My last
Wow.
relationship, relationships, when you trying to make something work with somebody, that really shines a microscope on who you are. You know what I mean? As far as
Absolutely.
your flaws and things of that nature. You know what I mean? It's a lot of things. And it helps you take a step back. You know what I mean? To look at yourself.
So that woman that you were in a relationship with, she kind of helped you kind of see what was going on, see how this was affecting you, and you were carrying this trauma. And she was the one that kind of helped you heal from it and kind of do a 180 to express yourself in a way that now you feel a little bit more free and less constricted to do or restricted to do so.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. And are you still in that relationship today?
No.
Okay. Do you think that people can heal from childhood trauma?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Some, it's a lot more complex. Some is not. Some people didn't go up with a lot of childhood trauma and things of that nature. So it just all, depends on who you're around, your support system, things of that nature. You know,
Wow. Okay. So you couldn't express how you felt. Was there another piece of trauma that you have that you carried with you
yeah.
as a result of your childhood?
A big one. Another big one for me was trust issues and abandonment wounds. You know,
Okay.
so you knew my pops. You know what I mean, and so he just taught me not to trust nobody. You know what I
Mm,
mean? That's that. And and then seeing how he moved, I could never trust nobody anyway, even if I wanted to.
mm,
It's kind of deep. You know what I mean? Like, even being in relationships, I always thought like I was this, good, perfect guy. What I'm saying? I was the best guy for the women and things of that nature. When like I've always been a player. You know what I'm saying? Like, never
yeah.
trusted anybody. So trust issues, that was one. Abandonment issues was another one. You know.
Talk to me a little bit about the abandonment issues.
So early childhood, you know what I mean, with just like, um, so like my mom, she would always spend more time with her boyfriend than she would with us. You know what I mean?
Mm,
And so that was an issue that I had within myself for a long time before I even realized it. You know what I mean? I'm talking about like 30 plus years where, you got abandonment issues and, what I mean? You start to understand why, you seek out attention in other people. You know what I
mm,
mean? From
yeah.
from abandonment issues, from things that you just didn't get from your parents that you needed.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So how did the abandonment issue shape you when you got older? How did those affect you?
Um, how did it affect me? Um,
Yeah.
So that one right there, I was always a people pleaser. You know what I mean? I wanted to
Okay.
please everybody. You know, that was a big one.
Did you feel like you always had to be around people because
Yes,
you really didn't get that from your being like you didn't get that closeness from your mother, so you sought that in people and always trying to be around and close to people?
absolutely,
Okay. Okay. And in turn, you wanted to be like the popular kid. You wanted to be around everybody. You didn't want to be alone.
absolutely. You hit it right on the head, B.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because you felt alone when you were, coming up, when
yep,
you were a child.
yep.
Wow.
And so that's why when I was younger, you always seen me hanging out with different groups of people. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, yeah, I had my boys, but I was cool with everybody. You know that. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And that goes right along with that thing I was talking about earlier with need validation. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It all plays a part. It all comes together. You know,
Absolutely. How are you today with that?
I'm not the same person. And like I said, like the guy that I am today, I just transformed into this guy through the last year or two. So it took me a long time, my whole life, to learn to get to where I'm at today because I didn't understand my issues. I didn't understand my trauma. I didn't understand it. And so it's very important for us to understand our trauma, because that plays a part in our everyday lives, especially in relationships, you know.
Yeah, for sure. For
And
sure.
we don't nobody want to be alone. So
Yeah. No, for sure. For sure. Wow, man. I didn't, it's funny, as long as I've known you, I think this is the first time, well, the conversation we had the other day that led to this episode, I think that was the first time we really just unpacked what you actually went through. Because I didn't meet you till you were like 15, you know what I'm
right,
saying? And, you know, I had no idea that all that stuff happened previously in the past. Here it is. I thought that, I don't know. It was just, I guess, me being a kid and me just thinking that because I mean, I was like, dang, this dude got two sets of parents. You know what I'm saying? He winning. I thought about, Christmas gifts. It's like, hey, I'm getting double the gifts. I'm getting double the birthday gifts. I'm getting, I mean, everything's just going great, and that was what my opinion was, not knowing that you had all this stuff that you had bottled up. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
So the people that you were around that you wanted to be close to, you said you kicked it with a different groups of people, right? All in all, did those people have long lasting effects on you, or do you think those people were just like kind of just void fillers to kind of really numb what truly you had going on inside you, the wound that you had going on inside you, which was the childhood trauma? Like, are any of those people, do you talk to any of those people today? Besides me, of course, and Larry, or do you think those groups were just there as a temporary fixing to help you get through what you were going through?
yeah. They were definitely placeholders. You know what I mean? But I never knew. I never knew that. I never knew. That's why they were in my life. That's the craziest thing about it is, sometimes, you know, we do a lot of things, unintentionally. You know what I mean? Subconsciously, without even knowing it or why we doing it. You know. But now those people aren't in my life. A lot of people, I've been close to or people I had love for, not in my life today. It's only a couple. You, Larry, Lamont. Yeah, it's only a couple. You know.
Yeah, 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 for sure. You still keep in touch with your stepmom?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Cool,
Mhm.
cool. Did you ever express to like your stepmom or your pops or your mom kind of the things that you went through as a child? Like, did you ever express that to any of them?
Yes, my mom, when she was in town, I'm gonna have to say about 2 or 3 years ago. Actually,
Okay.
about 3 years ago, to my mom and my stepmom. Just recently, we was talking about it. We had went out to brunch like 2 weeks ago, and we were talking about it because we all came up in the same household, and we
Right.
were both were talking about the trauma that she suffered as a parent. That's crazy, right? But the
Yeah.
relationship, being married, and I was talking about the things that I went through and how it affected me. So yeah,
So you were able to express that. And how was that received? Was it like, how was it received by them when you expressed it to
it
them?
was it was it was accepting. You know what I mean? So like it's different. Like when you get to a point of life, like to where you really actually able to express yourself to your parents. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Shit you like never thought you could say or was comfortable saying. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Cause
So you,
we was raised yes sir, yes ma'am, no sir, no ma'am, like all that old military slavery type stuff. You know what I mean? And that's just they ain't the way to raise nobody. You know what I mean? Because I'm not gonna get into all of that, but yeah, man, it's deep.
no, for sure. For sure. Yeah, I was there for your part of your upbringing. I know it was yes ma'am, yes sir, and it was really, like you said, it was my way or the highway. And It was like, if I want your opinion, I'll ask for it. And
Right.
they never asked for it.
They never asked for it.
They
They do
never
not need
asked,
your opinion
bro. They
or
never asked
feedback.
for it. Yeah, yeah. And it was like, how dare you if you even try to even form an opinion. So
Right.
I could definitely understand how that affected you. And so now today, I mean, you're pretty outspoken, right? You express how you feel. You don't hold back. I mean, it's obviously tasteful in a respectful manner, but now you're to the point where it's like I'm free to be able to express my views and express my opinions on certain things and kind of let you know what's on my brain and what I'm feeling and what I'm dealing with. And you said that you've actually just gotten to that point in this last like year or two.
Yes.
Wow. Wow. And you're 40 years old.
40 years old, B.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, this thing doesn't have a expiration date, man. Not a statute of limitations on this, right? I mean, you could be 50, 60 years old still dealing with stuff, especially if you haven't healed from it. You constantly think about how you were raised as a child and what you went through. And that's the type of stuff that really just carries with you. I didn't realize that it was so long. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But that's good, though. That's good that you've gotten to a point now where you're in a better space and you can express yourself. It's really good. All right. So the last thing I'll ask you is that, 40-year-old Anthony, you're sitting across the table from, I don't know, 15-year-old Anthony, 10-year-old Anthony, who is dealing with some childhood trauma or dealing with some things, and they don't know how to escape it. They don't know how to navigate it. And they come to you asking, like, I got some childhood trauma that I need to really just let go. Maybe they're in high school, maybe they're in college, right? And they're still dealing with stuff from when they were 10 years old. What is something that you would tell them to help them to try to get through it or navigate it or try to heal? Because that's an open wound that's going to bleed until you close that wound, right? So how do you tell them to deal with that and navigate that? If they're going through that.
I'll tell them to seek professional help, counseling. Gain a relationship with a counselor or a therapist, somebody you can sit down and talk to and put it all on the table. That's the most important part. You know what I mean? Is to be able to talk about it because all the stuff I went through, like I said, I'm just not start talking about it. You know what I mean? Here we go. I'm 40 years old and, I'm talking from 30, 40 years, 35 years ago. You know what I mean? That's crazy. And so, yeah,
Right.
you gotta be able to sit down and talk to somebody, and because then you can process it. You know what I mean? And then it'll help you better understand yourself. So why you are the way you are, so you can change that. You know.
Do you also think it helps to have an inner circle that can help get you through it as well?
Yes.
People like-minded people who have gone through it, who have similar stories that can help. You can bounce ideas off. Does it help to kind of have an inner circle that can help you through it as well?
That's just as important as having a counselor or therapist. Just I didn't get a chance to get there and say it yet, but yeah,
Yeah,
you need
yeah,
that for sure. You know, especially
yeah, for
like
sure.
platforms like this. You know what I mean? This is a an outlet for me. To get on and to talk about it and to put it on the table. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Especially like a lot of the other stuff. You know what I mean? As far as tragedy and losses. You know what I mean? Because we don't talk about that every day. You can't. It's just it's different. So
yeah, for sure. And I would even piggyback off of that to say, make sure you do that before you enter into a relationship, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to go into a relationship with that baggage. Because to be honest with you, it's not fair to the other person, but it's really not fair to you either. What you dealt with, what you went through, it's not fair to you, but it's also not fair to bring that into a relationship with the other person, because that might not be the other person's wound or issue that they're going through. And imagine you coming into a situation with them and you do have that childhood trauma, those abandonment issues, and ends up affecting the relationship, then 9 times out of 10, it's not going to work out anyway, you
Hmm.
know? So what you're doing is that you're coming in with the baggage and you're really just wasting time because inevitably it's just not going to work out. So I would say if you do have childhood trauma, like Anthony said, and that's good to seek help, seek therapy. Also surround yourself around people who can help you get through it when you're not talking to a counselor or a therapist. And just make sure that you are in a position where you are healed from that before you enter into a relationship. I know you mentioned, Anthony, that it was your relationship that actually helped you see that, which is good because, in those moments, you came into the relationship with the baggage and, it was one of those things where the person was able to kind of see that and help you, get through it, which was a great thing. But also at the same time, if you can avoid going through it while you're in it versus actually proactively addressing it before you enter into the relationship, that's something that, can benefit you in the long run. And it's going to make for a healthy, sustainable relationship as well, because now you can focus on other things now that you don't have that, that baggage going into it. So,
Right.
man, well, this was good, man. Appreciate you stopping through, coming on, doing another episode with me, man. It's always a pleasure to talk to you and just kind of get your story, man. And so, definitely appreciate you, bro, for stopping by.
Oh yeah, absolutely, brother. Anytime.
All right, well, make sure you following us on IG where we post reels of the episodes at Flip That Switch. And if you can't watch us, you can listen to us wherever you get your podcast at Flip That Switch. So we're on Apple, Spotify, Buzzsprout. So if you can't watch us, you can listen to us as well. But just make sure one way or the other you're tapping in with us. And again, man, Anthony, thank you again for coming on, just giving us your story about your childhood trauma and what you went through and where you are today. And we definitely appreciate you taking the time to talk with us, bro.
You're welcome, brother.
All right. We're going to see y'all for the next episode and we out. Peace.
Peace.